Let's talk about some new developments. Here's a very familiar map. This is Moon War, and let's say that we want to make some changes to this map. So let's jump into Blender here. First off, you now have the ability to import the objects in your map with these two checkboxes. So if I import this map, it will actually load every single object and path point that this map contains. So once it's done loading, it will show us every single object, and we can go in and make changes. So this is where we spawn. It's this box labeled player. And let's say that, you know what, I want to get rid of everything but the player here. So what I'm going to do is select the map, and I'll scroll down and disable terrain selection. And what this allows me to do is select objects independently of the map. So I don't have to worry about selecting the map and accidentally deleting it. So I'm just going to select everything and then shift click on the player object twice, hit the delete key, and I can save these changes. Now I can just export the map. And when that's done, we can just reload. Don't worry about those. Those are just SBP specific stuff. And there we go. Everything is gone. So this leads to the second major feature, is that let's say that we want to place stuff in our map. So let's jump back into Blender. Okay, and let's say that I want the player to be surrounded by scrap. So you might have noticed this handy dandy object library here. You can change the size of the icons if you want. They're categorized by the faction, the map elements, which are stuff that the players use and collect on the map, and then there's power-ups, which will be extremely useful for making deathmatch maps. So, but yeah. So let's go to map elements and say, okay, well, I just want to place a bunch of scrap, in a circle around the player. And all the different pieces of scrap basically do the same thing. They just use slightly different models and textures. So there we go. Now I can export this map again, reload it, and there we go. We have our scrap there. Now, one of the things that this enables you to do is to manage changes to your map in a more coherent way. Now, if you want to move stuff around, it's no longer like redo your entire freaking map kind of territory. And if you want to move stuff around, this is another feature that I put in. By default, all objects in your map will adhere to the map's terrain. So you don't have to do any kind of special switches or anything. It just behaves this way by default. There is one scenario where you might not want your object to adhere to the ground, though. So let's go over that. Say that I want to stack a bunch of these hangers on top of each other and orient them, or maybe shove them into the ground on purpose. In the Battlezone map editor, it is actually impossible to deviate from orienting and positioning stuff relative to terrain. But with the map editor in Blender, we can actually break the rules quite a lot. So if we click on this little icon here while having our object selected, we can actually turn off or get rid of its shrink wrap modifier. And we can position and orient this thing however we want. So I'm just going to put this right in front of me, and yeah, let's do it that. Let's shove it into the ground a little bit, and then export it and see what we get. So we're no longer bound by the rules of the classic map editor. We can do all kinds of crazy stuff. We can stack things on top of each other, dress up environments however we want to. It doesn't matter. You can do it. And obviously, since you can multi-select things now and duplicate them and delete them in large groups, it means that just in general, managing your map is going to be massively easier than it has been in the past. It's also a nice thing that we have tools which are optimized for maximum flexibility, so that we can do things like this, where we can enable effect only locations and then scale the objects from an origin point. So we could use this to rescale the map, but this technically isn't necessary. It's only if you're doing like more specific work and you need more control. But if you resize your map, you're going to notice that every single one of your objects is proportionately placed as the map is sized up or down. So rescaling your map does not. It no longer means redoing the entire thing. Um, so that's kind of nice. I kind of got tired of having to redo the scrap distribution on the entire map every time I changed, the terrain in some way, and I hated that. One more thing about object placement before we move on. So if I place a bunch of fighters here, or scouts or whatever, you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I determine what team they're on, or what their stats are, or anything like that? Um, all of that is stored within the BZN file when you load it, and it's also included. It's also embedded into all of these library objects. You can access that by clicking on this green icon here, and then scrolling down to custom properties. Now, this is something that I would like to eventually make a little bit more elegant. But for right now, if you want to edit miscellaneous stuff, such as the team that the unit is on, like right now, this is on team 1, so that when the first player loads into the map, it'll register as a friendly. But if you set this to team 2, it'll register as an enemy to the first player. Um, so if you want to change the team, change this number, and then you'll have to scroll all the way down and change the perceived team as well. It's very important that you leave this box symbol in place, because this is needed. So do not delete this. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that you can edit here. Like if you wanted to place like a nav beacon that's invulnerable and has a custom name on it, like you can totally do that through here. Um, but this is kind of advanced user territory, so hopefully I can eventually find a way to, elegantly present this to the user. But for right now, it is what it is. There's a couple new buttons here, so let me explain what these actually do. The shrink wrap buttons allow you to take any geometrical object and make your terrain conform to it. So to demonstrate this, I'll use the CCA hanger. Where is that thing? Right here. And I'm just going to scale this up a little bit. And let's say that I want the terrain to conform to this shape. So I'm just going to click this button. And what it does is that it converts it into a kind of like a vacuum form thing. So it's going to give us an object which we can move, rotate, and scale, which will make the terrain take this particular shape. And we can duplicate this object. If I hit Shift D to duplicate and just move this stuff around, I can create any number of copies of this thing, and then select them all, and then select selected object shrink wrap, and there we go. And all of these are fully dynamic and non-destructive. And when you're done, when you want to finalize your changes, all you have to do is click Select Bake Shrink Wrap, and that'll get rid of the objects but leave their changes in place. Now, obviously, you're not going to be typically using like buildings or units to as shrink wrap objects, but you can do it if you want to. But that's really not the purpose of this tool. And it does have limitations. The limitations are oddly similar to 3D printing, of course, where terrain can only go up or down, and overhangs are not possible in terrain, at least not directly. So But it's a nice little feature that lets you get like highly specific shapes out of in your terrain. A better example of a typical use case scenario of this tool, though, would be to go into the add drop down list and select mesh, and you can use any one of these primitives as a shrink wrap object. So, for instance, let's say that you want to use a cube. And now, remember that this map is, it's quite large compared to the object that we just spawned. So I'm actually going to scale this up quite a bit. I'll just grab this outer ring here and scale this box way up and move it somewhere. And then I'll just click this button, select object shrink wrap. And now I am free to rotate and move this thing however I want. Now the effect is limited to the resolution of Battlezone's terrain. So basically, the larger your object is, the more accurately it will be represented. And also, straight lines will obviously do better than diagonal lines because, again, the geometry is limited in that way. But let's say that you want to do something like a pyramid. Well, you could just turn this cube on one of its sides here and just shove it into the terrain, and then maybe align the triangular parts accordingly. And you could totally have a map with like pyramids and stuff. This would be a good death match idea, I suppose, or maybe just good for set decoration or whatever. But I can just select all of these and then shrink wrap these too, so that I have like a bunch of pyramids and I can put them anywhere I want. Yeah, and I can even duplicate the duplicates and just make the pyramids. Why not? Yeah, look at that. In general, the shrink wrap tools are really, really good for either design shapes or artificial structures. And if you happen to know your way around Blender's modeling toolset, the shrink wrap tools become even more powerful. You can easily create artificial structures and things out of your terrain with pretty much minimal effort. The last feature that I'll cover is the select set respawning button. This is mainly for deathmatch maps, but it can be used in strategy maps as well. Uh, Generally, in the library, you have access to pretty much all the power ups, even the power ups that aren't normally seen in the game, like the green minigun or the blue flash cannon, stuff like that. And yeah, those are actually in the game. You can actually place those if you want. But if you want them to respawn, all you have to do is place whatever objects on your map that you want. This is actually quite small. Yeah, just place your power ups as you want. It doesn't matter what they are. And this is multi-select capable, so I can select pretty much all of these. And if I want these to all respawn on a 20-second timer, you'll see respawn time in seconds. So if I want them to respawn like every 5 seconds, I'll just set it to 5 and then click here. And then you'll see that these visually change to represent a respawning object. And if you want to update the time, like let's say that, oh, well, like 5 seconds is too short. I want to change all of these to be like 20 seconds instead. So I'll just change this to 20 and then just press this button again while I have these selected, and all of them will be updated to 20 seconds. So there is that. So I hope you enjoyed these changes. I worked really hard to make these all work and function as what I would hope that most users would expect. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the kind of crazy stuff that some aspiring map makers might make with these tools. I know that I made these tools as kind of I made these tools kind of like as a result of a showstopper with a map that I wanted to make, but couldn't because of the limitations of the Battlezone map editor tools. So there's a little bit in it for me too. And I hope to actually have more time to use these tools rather than develop them in the near future.